On this episode of LARP Chats, I'll be interviewing Unicorn. At the time of this recording, they play out of Ashmark at Belegarth Group in Ashland, Oregon. This season of LARP Chat focuses on Legacy. In this episode, you'll hear about Unicorn's Belegarth journey and learn about some of the first lessons given to her in her adventure. You'll also hear from her perspective on how the legacy of knighthood at Belegarth changed through the years and where she hopes to see it go. Please consider hitting the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more LARP content. And now on to the episode. Hello and welcome to LARP Chats. Today we have Unicorn from Ashmark in Ashland, Oregon. They play Belegarth. They've been playing for 9 years?
Yeah, 9 years. So
when you first started, who really influenced you when you started the game, and what kind of lessons did they teach you?
I live in Medford now, and I'm part of Ashmark. But I started in San Diego, in the realm of Andor, and I was very influenced by Southern California Belegarth culture. I think that Belegarth specifically, our culture sort of varies in different regions, and Southern California really has its own unique culture. I suppose I would be remiss if I didn't mention my knight, Sir Kyrian. Obviously had a huge impact, as well as Sir Anastasia. But locally, Sir Yuri was a huge influence, and you know, people still continue to influence me today and shape how I navigate our community. And so I'm currently inspired by a lot of people as well.
Do you remember some of the lessons that you first learned from some of the people that inspired you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Yuri really instilled the spirit of Belegarth in me, because my second event was an Andor Day event, and I was dressed so well in the theme that they used me in one of the scenario battles, myself and my friend who were both dressed, and they had to get us to the other side, like capture the flag. And my entire team died. And so I opened up my parasol and used it as a shield and got across to the other side and won. And Yuri was the one heralding the match and yelled, "That was completely illegal and she wins!" And that was really my first lesson in Belegarth being radically for everyone and being what you decide to make it. I really try to tell people that we have something for everyone, and if we don't have it, we're here to help you make it. And I'm really passionate about creating those spaces for people.
Would you say that is what the spirit of Belegarth is? If you can't explain it at all, please do.
The spirit of Belegarth is a possum born inside of a dumpster that crawled its way out, and on the way out managed to grab some pieces of trash that ended up being bracers and a chess piece, and that possum is ready for battle. That's the spirit of Belegarth. But I think the underlying thread of our community is that this is a place where you're home, and if you care about your community cares about you. I think that each medieval combat society or LARP community has its own unique element that it brings to the table, and I think that Belegarth's is a place to explore alternate ideas. I think it's why we have themes that aren't necessarily medieval, even though we are a medieval combat society. I think it's why we purposely try and have tournaments that are outside of the norm and have locations for events that are a little outside the norm, because we want it to be a place where, yes, of course, it's medieval combat, and that's what the combat is based on, but that evolves into a lot of things. We assume that the people of the Middle Ages also branched out and were creative in some regard. And every society is influenced by the people around them. And we think that that's what makes us uniquely Belegarth.
Have you found yourself in a mentor role? And if so, what lessons have you imparted to these peoples?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do find myself largely in a mentor role in the community now. I'm a knight, and I am also a master seneschal and a master artificer. So I do have apprentices and squires, and I'm honored that they have trusted me to guide them and to help them grow. There's a lot of things we do together. Like I said, I'm inspired currently by the people of Belegarth, and some of the people I'm inspired the most by are the folks who are in my charge. It's a humbling experience to have people say that they want to learn from you. And I take that very seriously. Once a month, we have leadership meetings where we, as a group, have Socratic seminars around different books that we read together on leadership so that we can cultivate leaders who can bring our sport into the future. I think that sometimes people can forget to train folks for the future. They get kind of excited about the position they're in, and that's pretty understandable. It's exciting when people honor you for things. But we can't continue as a society, and we can't grow and evolve as a society unless we help train people for the future. And I'm really blessed to have a lot of people that trust me with that.
Is there a particular lesson that you try to get across when you're teaching the people that you're mentoring?
There are two things.
All right.
Yeah. So, there is one thing that I try and impart to the people who are in my charge, which is be excellent to each other. Act with kindness. Remember that you're here in your community to fill your cup, and it should be a place where other people fill their cup. We shouldn't be making it a situation where neither can happen. And part of that is also balance. A lot of times in Peerage, we want to show our community how much we love them through acts of service, and we end up giving too much of ourselves in a way that's unsustainable. And it's really important to me that the folks who are in my charge learn from my mistakes and have a better work-life balance in the sport, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I tell everybody who comes to my service is, I don't need your piety, I need your honesty. I cannot help you grow if you're trying to impress me rather than coming to me on the same level.
That's a good lesson. What early pieces of advice that you received that has really stuck with you through the years?
Oh, there are a couple really good ones. One is that it is unwise to put your happiness in the hands of others. I think a lot of times here we get really excited to see our friends and can get disappointed when expectations aren't met. And I think we have to all remember that we're doing our best. And that if you come without expectations, then people always surprise you in the best ways. And really, disappointment is just unmet expectations, and often we forget to even vocalize those expectations. And Belegarth has really taught me that if you put those down, you'll find that people are here to meet you on your level and are excited that you're here.
What traditions or customs that are in the game of Belegarth that you really appreciate and embrace?
As a whole, I love that we embrace the idea of yes and. That if enough people are here for it, it becomes canon for us. And I think that overarchingly, that's something that I really appreciate because it does allow us to grow in really fun ways. To pin a specific thing down, I think I'm personally pagan, and I, for a long time, have been very adamant that I don't want to incorporate that into my LARP because my religion isn't a LARP. But we've, in the past few years, created a pagan house for Belegarth because there are a lot of folks who don't have an actual circle to practice with. And we've created a non-denominational place where as long as you come to us with love and trust, you're welcome. And we are able to meet at pretty much any event, and we grow each time. And every time, because we grow, folks are able to link up on particular paths, and they're able to learn and grow from each other. We also have people who are not pagan, who are devoutly Christian, who are Jewish, who come and join us in solidarity, and I think that's really beautiful.
Well, it's a nice community aspect.
Yeah.
Are there any stories that you've heard from before you started playing that have been passed down through the ages, so to speak?
Oh my gosh. I happen to be privy to probably the most pervasive one in our customs. My knight, Circarian Hawksword, is one of the founding knights of Belegarth and one of the original 9 knights of Numenor, which is special to some people. So we all have titles in Belegarth, And at one Chaos Wars, his then wife was doing the morning announcements and introduced him as Sir Kyrian Hawksword, patron saint of Belegarth. And then every day after just kept adding ridiculous and hilarious titles, just one after the other. And now it's an entire wiki page. And it is a joke to be able to say them all in order. In fact, we used to be in the same unit, and our unit mates would sneak an extra nickname into the wiki and then ask me to recite them all.
Oh.
And it's the best part of all of this is he's perhaps the most humble man you'll ever meet. And he really probably wishes we wouldn't do this other than the good-naturedness of it all. And he is such a good sport. He still won't let me make a saint's package to auction off with a little novena of him and a rosary, but we'll get there.
How dare he not allow that?
But I think that that's one of my favorite traditions in Belegarth. And now anytime we see him, even when it's not in the community, we hail him as such.
What are your most proud accomplishments or achievements that you've had in the game?
There's a lot to be proud of because this is a really great community. And I've had a lot of really fortunate experiences. I'm proud that Ashmark is doing well and is in line to receive voting rights, and they currently have speaking rights. I'm proud that I have helped a few different realms develop bylaws. I'm proud of the work I've done to help create a safe space in our community, because I think that it's one thing to say that you're a safe community. And I think a lot of people do say that, and I think that a lot of people intend for their community to be safe and welcoming. But I think that it's a completely different task. Wake up every morning and do the work to make your community safe and accessible to everyone. And that's not always happy, and that's not always pretty, and sometimes we have to explore areas that are uncomfortable, but it always makes us better in the long run. And I am so proud that we don't shy away from that work and that we continue to grow to really be for everyone. And that's everything from being in a more inclusive space for folks of all genders and all paths and all races, to finding ways to be more handicap accessible. We really are, each time we have an event or get together, really looking at what was great and what could have gone better. And every time there's an answer for both. And I love that that's work we do together.
It's important to continue to be vigilant and work towards those goals, I think.
Yeah, I think it's so important to celebrate our achievements, but when we do that for too long, we become stagnant and we forget to look at the bigger picture.
What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind in the game?
Oh my gosh. What a great question. Anyone who is fortunate enough to reach the position of mentor in our sport has different aspects that they are going to focus on. And there's something that each mentor really uniquely provides to our sport. But this is actually an area that I have thought so much about that I actually have a catchphrase for it, which is bread and roses. There's a little background that's needed here. Bread and Roses is a folk song that you can look up, and a lot of folks have covered it. But it actually comes from the textile strikes in the early 1900s. And I'm very passionate about workers' rights. And the workers' conditions were so terrible that the women who were brought over from the Low Countries of Europe were dying in their 20s from the dust in the weave rooms. And so they weren't able to vote because they weren't U.S. citizens. So they struck for hours, wages, and conditions like any strike. And they were on strike for so long, they had to send their children out of the city because they were starving. And they continued to strike. And there was a woman named Helen Todd who wore a sandwich board that said bread and roses and sang a song that reflected the idea that if we are the people who are making the bread, making the ovens where the bread can be made, we don't only deserve a piece of that bread, we deserve time to stop and smell the roses that society was able to cultivate. I think that in these LARP communities, folks often get divided into service and general population. You can fight and do both, but often you become either somebody who contributes to the vibe or somebody who contributes to service. And it's so important to me that people remember that a society cannot exist without both. And that if you are someone who is killing yourself to make this event happen, you have time to stop and smell the roses and celebrate it. So yes, I call it bread and roses. And each one of the folks in my charge has to not only contribute to their society, but also show that they are learning to do that in a balanced way.
That's a nice approach. How do you think the game will evolve in the next 5, 10, or even 20 years?
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. So I think that Belegarth is changes more rapidly than some of the other comparable sports. And I think that there is a real divide between the folks who look at the tradition and how things were founded and the why behind that, and the folks who are like, I don't care about any of that. I am here for the wacky bats, my guy. And I think again that society happens when both interact, which is what I enjoy watching and participating in. I think that the real lasting change happens when the folks who want to radicalize the movement understand the why behind it. Because then we get the why from history and that need is still served if it's relevant, but we also get to move forward. And I think a really great example of that is knighthood. In Belegarth, it used to be that if you did not fight, you could not be a knight. I walk with a crutch and I cannot be on the field. There was a time when I tried to arch and my doctors got so angry at me. It's not worth my health. But we found as a community that there were other ways for me to contribute to combat. I can make every weapon. I can herald. I make great gear for folks to wear on the field that's going to last and be safe. I contribute to scenario battles and things like that. And I think that we are constantly finding ways to say, well, these are the rules, but what does that really look like? And as a community, we decided that you did not need to fight to be a knight. One of my favorite arguments that someone made is, okay, but who thinks Dame Judi Dench is actually going to defend the UK? And of course, we have other paths for our artisans and for our chroniclers and for our service members and things like that. And those are still really beautiful. But those have all kind of come together to form the umbrella that we call peerage. And I'm excited to see what that does look like in 5 or 10 years when people pull apart even further, those standards and examine them even further and find if they actually serve our community. And I honestly can't wait to see what they throw out and what they save, even from the things I've helped create.
Can you go ahead and take a stab and try to guess what might happen?
Ballistas. What I actually think we're going to see is more accessibility on the field. What I think we're going to see now is an enrichment of our culture specifically. And I know that still sounds nebulous. I promise I'm not trying to, I am pinning this down here. And it's that a society works to cultivate different things at any given time. And we've done a lot to cultivate, like I've said, a place that's welcoming for everyone. I feel a tide of us moving towards helping each individual level up in the game. So we have garb standards, but we also frequently don't hold people to them because we don't want there to be a barrier to entry. Of course it's more immersive for people to wear garb. And also if someone showed up and they don't have garb, but they want to be here, we want to help them. And so recently some of us have started a drive, essentially a house, to hoard old garb that's still in good use and gently loved, and then give it out to new folks so that there isn't a barrier to entry, but they still feel completely immersed. And I really see a push to do that, not only with garb, but with weapons, with the sites we pick. The site we are at now is incredibly immersive. And I think that this is not the only site that's endeavored to do that. I see a lot more effort towards themes as well, which went by the wayside for a little bit. That ebbs and flows, but is another great example of how I think that we're really starting to enrich our community with aesthetics now.
It'll be interesting to see if that ends up being how it goes.
Yeah, see if I was right.
If you could leave one message for future generations of Belegarth players, what would that message be?
Every society has a currency. And Belegarth is pretty adamant that that currency not actually be money, and I'm here for that. Our currency is reputation. Our currency is your word. Our currency is actions and deeds. It's why you see very, very little theft throughout our entire international community. We're an honor-based society. And I want to remind people that your reputation is not everything, but it can be a currency. And it's important to pick your battles and decide where you're going to put your weight and where you're going to spend that currency. Because if a reputation is currency, then it clearly takes a long time to build any kind of savings, and it can be spent rather quickly. And sometimes it's worth it. There are hills worth dying on. There are also battles worth putting back. And I don't think that Belegarth is afraid of fighting the right battles right now, but I want us to always remember that.
Hopefully they will. Unicorn, thank you for being on LARP Chats today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching. Stay inspired, stay excited, and keep fighting.